Hey, Dan, thanks for joining us today. As way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thank you, Brian. So currently I am at AWS as a sales leader, running a large portion of our analytics business across 5 different segments in the Americas. Um, I am speaking to you from North Shore, Massachusetts, a little seaside town called Manchester by the Sea. Um, and quickly in terms of story, uh, grew up in New Hampshire on a farm, Brian, and I'd say that that's relevant to our discussion because it's kind of the foundation for my sales career. So if you're familiar with farming at all, it's pretty hard. It's very, very, very hard work. And so that's number one. And number two, a farmer, at least in New Hampshire on the gentleman farm, which is a small farm, has to do everything themselves. And so that those two, monikers of hard work and doing things yourself are the basis of my sales career. And then, quickly, I graduated from college, worked in finance at DEC, got to be an IT person, buying software on the IT side of things as a customer. And so that was a really great experience to have to go before boards and ask for $14 million investments and to see how that process works on that side. Got to be a consultant and actually roll out software as a paid for consultant and get my hands dirty that way. Got to live in Europe doing consulting, so I had an international view. Then I took those skills, which I call an unnatural advantage, right? So as a salesperson, to know what it looks like to roll it out, the financial aspects of it, to be an IT person, and then translate that into being sales, you have an unnatural advantage. And so I've been an individual contributor in sales. I've been a sales leader, both. And so I'll stop there, but that's my
Cool.
quick story.
Well, a little bit about the farm. So a family farm, I assume?
Correct. Yeah. So multi-generational, what they call a gentleman farm, which is a 40-acre plot. If when the U.S. was first formed, they divided most of New England into 40 acres. And so my family, the Lawrences, back in the 1600s, were given a 40-acre plot in New Hampshire. And you grow vegetables, you have cows, and sell dairy products.
Yeah. And in the summers, I worked on a farm, especially during hay baling season. So
Yeah. So
I did it. Yeah.
yeah.
And especially that first time you do it, you start running with the bales of hay. And the boss says, you don't want to be running.
Right. So wait a minute. So the bales of hay, typically they chuck out of the machine and go into the trailer. Is
You
that
had to
what you
do
were
that. You
doing?
had to get it on the trailer and then pile them and then take the
Hmm.
trailer to the barn. And
Correct.
then something else would ramp it up onto the barn. And then you had to stack them on the barn.
That's right.
And if you make the mistake of showing up with short pants,
Oh yeah, forget it.
the hay goes right into your thighs.
Yes, no doubt.
So I can empathize with, yes, farming is a great way to, well, it's fun to grow up because it's outdoors, fresh air, lots of work and exercise, but it is continuous work.
It is. Yeah. So nothing's harder in my opinion, in terms of a job. So selling software is just a
It's a
walk in
piece
the
of cake
park.
compared to
Exactly. That's right.
that. And why sales? What did you like about that, or what appealed to you?
So I began my sales career as a sales engineer. And so having a technical background, that's where I began. It was more natural fit. But the reason I went into sales engineering was that I had a pretty strong technical background, certifications and whatnot. But enjoyed being in front of customers and speaking and presenting and solving problems. And so it was kind of a natural fit. And then a sales leader that I work for said, hey, Dan, you can walk and talk and at the same time, right? So why don't you get into sales? You can make yourself a heck of a lot more money,
Yeah.
travel less, and do that. And I had a family or a budding family at the time that was just growing. And so my wife's like, yeah, if you can make more money, then go do that. So that was the beginning.
And how was that transition? Because
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question. It's a hard transition from sales engineer to sales, and I didn't like it at all at first, because I felt like as a trusted advisor, sales engineer, you're going into a sales meeting, then that switches to a salesperson where everyone grabs their wallet, right? And they're like, oh, this is the sales guy, and so
Yeah.
you lose that. You don't have that trust is readily available. Plus the quota and having to sell deals and the pressure of that those things were uncomfortable. However, Brian, as soon as I remember this clearly, as soon as I closed that first, like I think it was a 700K deal, and I got a $60,000 commission check, and I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. It's worth it. I'm in. And so making that repeatable and making that transition was smooth after that.
Yeah. And how did you learn kind of the business side of the sale, the politics, the administration, all of the things that typically either slow down or kill a deal?
Yeah, so I think part of that happened. The start of that journey, was the career I mentioned, but also being a sales engineer and working with multiple different salespeople and seeing their style and see, basically all of the good things that they brought to the table and working through those issues just mentioned. I thought that was really helpful to me. So I basically took a page out of their books. But then honestly, it was just at bats. You learn those things over time, and when you get stuck, you have to figure them out and solve those. So I think that that helped. And also, I had mentors in my career that were like, Dan, understanding the business aspects are really important. So I remember signing up for a Wall Street Journal subscription. In the old days, I get the paper delivered every day and reading it, and getting my MBA and just and sort of doubling down on having the business conversations.
So did the MBA kind of help out because you could understand what the finance people were looking for, what the board is looking for, what the people who don't get the technology care about?
Yeah, I do think it was important. And also my undergrad degree was in business also. So I felt like the business aspects I, had a pretty good understanding. And truthfully, Brian, I was not a natural born seller. There's some people that are just salespeople. I'd say that I'm a business person that also sells.
Yeah.
So I think that those things I was more suited to pick up.
And what were kind of the key um, really distinctions or epiphanies that you had the first like 3 to 5 years? Well,
Mm,
we heard the deal so you get the why comes in when you get.
yeah. Yeah. So a couple epiphanies. No, number one, um, thinking big. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of salespeople don't set their sights high enough in terms of the deal or how big that they could help the customer and the impact. So a lot of them will speak to a specific department and close that one deal versus thinking, okay, how could I go fully wide with the whole customer? And so I think first down and did a very large enterprise wide kind of deal and really pushed myself and pushed through that limitation. It opened up a lot of things. So that was a big epiphany to me, so that every time I was speaking to a customer, and even now as I'm coaching reps that think big, like push shoot for the stars right out of the gate, all the time. Go ahead, sorry.
And how did you kind of do that? I can see how with the technical background, you with the architects and all of them, you're grooving, you're on the same page, they're lighting up. But then how do you get the business people excited about the big thing and taking the risk out of it?
Yeah, so generally speaking, to think big, to execute on something like that, you need more than one person, right? And so, right, yeah, exactly. So in more than one department, right? And so, generally lay out a heat map of the business constituents, lines of
Yeah.
business leaders, right? So is it a functional leader? Is it marketing? Is it finance? Is it product? Is it manufacturing? Whatnot? And really getting relationships with those folks individually, getting wins for them, and until you get enough of them where that you have consensus. So you can have a couple of detractors, Brian. It's okay to have a couple of people that
Sure.
are
You're
against
always
what it is
going
you're
to.
doing,
Yeah.
right? But if you get majority, then you're going to win. And so really tackling each of those business constituents individually, and each one of them has their own angle. So you have to win them individually with their angle. Then once you get consensus, you put it together into a package, and then you take it up to the board or the senior leaders at that point.
And what was if any, the major obstacles that you face? Because when you go from talking to people that you're comfortable, that you know more than them, you can add tremendous value to them, to then going to line of business, operations, finance, leadership.
Yeah. So again, as a farmer, you think you can do it all yourself, and you
You
try,
do,
you
right?
try to, add as much value as you possibly can. However, one of the things you learn as well is to bring in other resources that can have that conversation along with you, right? So
Yeah,
perhaps, you bring in your CFO when you're talking to their CFO, or you're bringing in your product leader when you're talking to their product leader, or right. So to win trust and add value, then you can do it that way. If you in your brain don't have it to give to them. So
and now are you in leadership? Is that true?
I am correct. So I
Yeah.
manage the sales team. Yes. Now,
How do you like that?
I like it. I like it a lot. And truthfully, when I started in Amazon, I went back to being individual contributor. So I had a conversation with my wife, and we did kind of a career summit. And she's like, Dan, when were you the happiest in your career? And I said, well, when I was carrying a bag and selling. She's, well, then go back and do that. And
Yeah.
because I had a couple of interesting startup experiences as a sales leader that I really great stories, but for another time. And so I decided to go back to being an IC. But then, truthfully, and Brian, in life, you can't really go back to things, right? Like I'd
It's
love to
hard.
be 17 years old again and be able to dunk a basketball, but I can't go back, right? You can't do that. So same thing in your career. So I think leadership for me is it's important. It's more purpose driven in terms of like coaching others, helping others. Also the strategy aspects and visibility that you have in the business. I think some of those things you're not quite privy to as an individual contributor. No matter how good you are, you're not working to shape the product direction in your company. You're not meeting with the leaders in that respect. And so those things were, I guess, untouched in an individual contributor role. And so I appreciate that about leadership.
And what do you look for in reps?
Yeah, so past success is always the number one indicator of future success.
Yeah.
So that's number one. So if you can find someone who's been successful and who's been, it's like Major League Baseball, right? You can have one season, but water always seeks its level with a rep, and boom, you get that. However, if you're building like inside sales team, or you're starting with more junior, fresh people, then what I'm looking for is grit and determination and perseverance, and perhaps ex-athletes. I have a penchant for ex-athletes because they've endured pain, they've had to push through things, and I think that's really indicative of success in sales. But even then, it's still a crapshoot.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard to find farmers that turn salespeople.
It is. That's right. Exactly. That's right. No doubt.
Have you had any kind of acid tests during the interview process or the vetting process that have really shown to be really reliable?
There are, I'd say interviewing is a flawed science. I've tried a lot of different things in the testing process. One of the questions I find that is helpful is how lucky do you think you are as a human being? And for folks, yeah, so for folks that consider themselves unlucky, then chances are they have that Debbie Downer kind of personality, and it's hard to be a successful salesperson if you're not seeing glass half full. So lucky, I think, is a good one. And believe it or not, people are generally pretty truthful with it, because they hear the question and they're like, well, yeah, I'm lucky, or I'm not, or and so they just kind of shoot it out. It's not one of those things that they're contriving in their mind on why is he asking me this, and what's the right answer. So that one kind of takes boundaries down.
I like that one. Because I think about it, because there's a comedian that I listen to that he touts his unluckiness, and he says he's grit through it, but he's been pretty lucky in his.
Yeah.
And I think it is, because I interviewed this guy who's big into serendipity. And because what is luck but opportunity meets preparation.
Exactly. That's right.
And when you get an opportunity, do you take advantage of it, or do you wait for something to fall on your head, or you just pure grit?
That's right. Yeah. And you make your luck, right? So that sort of teases that out too, right? Yeah.
And he uses the analogy: you go into a coffee shop and you spill a cup of coffee. there's a couple of ways you can apologize and start a conversation, or you can just clean it up and run out of there. But if you talk to people, the likelihood of them talking back with you and finding out something about them that could turn into something is high.
Mm-hmm. Very high.
On the athlete thing, have you found a particular sport? I assume team sport, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. I haven't actually found a specific sport. In fact, you'd say team sport. However, I've seen quite a few tennis players be successful sellers as well. And that's very individual, right? Because it's like all on your shoulders, and you're out there by yourself, and you've got to win and find a way. And there's no coach helping you. And so, yeah, so tennis actually is a good one.
Yeah, I guess repetition.
Mm-hmm. Practice. Yeah, you have to practice a lot to be. Yeah.
Looks simple. It ain't
Mm-hmm.
simple.
Exactly. That's right. That's right.
And how about as far as technical background or intellect? Because you're in a high bandwidth market, meaning you need to understand a lot of stuff.
Correct. Yeah. So definitely intellect is required as well. Yeah, that's almost table stakes. If you, but it can't be alone. You can be a super smart person who's not willing to run through walls to get deals done, right? So you need both. But so the challenge with that though is intellect is, you're not born, well, yes, some people are born with it, but I believe in neuroplasticity, right? That we all,
Sure.
Growth mindset, we can all be as intelligent as we want to be if we put our mind to it. And so it's almost like the people that perhaps had disadvantages initially, right? It's learning disability or dyslexic or things of that nature, and then succeeded are more apt to be successful than someone who was naturally smart. So if I'm interviewing someone who had a silver spoon in their mouth and went to a great school or whatnot, but they say the right things, that's not enough. If you endured some adversity and had to push through it, then that's great.
Yeah, because I haven't found that many great salespeople with great background, like Ivy League.
Right. Exactly. That's right.
And when I have, they got like a history degree or an art degree or something that didn't have career applicability in business.
Mm-hmm.
Had an academic applicability, but not career. Because I think they need that adversity.
Mm-hmm.
to kind of cut through. And the other thing about sports, that competitiveness, that there is a distinction between winning and losing.
Mm-hmm.
Where in school, you get a grade, but the difference between an A and an A minus doesn't really worry most people that much.
Exactly.
Winning and losing. Right? Because that's what we
do. That's right.
Oh, you came in second, you get nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Because you're in a hyper technical and a hyper competitive space.
Yes.
Because the world's going to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of ways to do it.
Correct. That's right.
And I'm sure you get invited to a lot of the dances. So, and can be like a beauty contest. And the distinctions 100%. Sometimes are not obvious.
Yes, very, very true.
How can you tell when you're winning and when you're losing? Because they want to keep everybody in the beauty contest as long as possible.
Yeah. So this is a great question, Brian. One of the things that I think most salespeople struggle with is that in their mind, they think they know what's happening. And right. So I talked to this one guy, he said this one thing and they heard it this one way. And so either that they come up with a conclusion or, they'll take 5 words and they'll turn into 100 in their mind. And they're like, okay, I know exactly what's happening in this account because this one guy said this one thing and then I have it all figured out. And so to know if you're winning and losing, really, it's about playing dumb and being Columbo. Like you have to be the Columbo and you have to ask questions not of that one person you're talking to, but everyone at the account. And you have to triangulate is the word I use. Like, so I'll talk to my sales team and I'm like, well, did you triangulate? Well, no, I spoke to this one guy. Then how do you know you're winning? Did you talk to all the partners that are in this account? Did you speak to the rep that's, the other rep? What did he think? Did he hear about what's going on? Or did you speak, so the more people that you kind of get consensus from and that the story all lines up, then you know you're winning. If
And
otherwise you don't.
and is it typically a technical decision, or how much does the business side play into it?
That varies, right? So some decisions are made because the person likes the person or someone knows the person, and sometimes it's not as simple as like, oh, the technology is great or the TCO works, or there's definitely a human aspect in some deals. But yes, sometimes depending on the company, there's a methodical purchasing process, and you know what that process is. Then you've got to check the box. Yes, technical criteria met. Does it meet your business requirement? So yes, sometimes things follow that sort of methodical approach, and you have to kind of know what that approach is and follow it. And then sometimes it's very circuitous with the route, and you have to know and the difference and kind of figure it out.
And you're also stepping on the toes of some pretty big players, and who have had decade-long relationships with some of these customers, not in your space, but adjacent to your space.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So they know how to play the top-down game very well.
Exactly. That's right.
So how do you either prevent that or circumvent it when it happens?
Yeah. So I would say that, for example, I, worked with a large customer recently, and you're talking about the top-down players, so the McKinseys of the world and the Accentures, and those folks are,
well, they have
right?
relationships with the people on the board.
Exactly. That's right.
And these decisions sometimes get there, not for approval, but maybe for consensus. We got to let the board know we're doing this, just so they know.
Exactly. Yeah. So what ends up happening as a technical seller is you reach out to those people because you'd like to have some rapport and relationship with them, and they're kind of like, yeah, go away. They have no interest in you. They don't want to, and also they don't want any sort of bias. They don't align themselves with technology partners. So what happens though is, I mentioned that sort of line of business consensus piece. As you start to win over some of the people in the business, you capture their attention. And once you capture the business people's attention and the consultants' attention by extension, because some of those people are their constituents, right? And they're like, oh, well, all of a sudden, head of R&D is talking about AWS or Amazon. So McKinsey's like, And so then you reach out to McKinsey and you say, hey, and you start a rapport with them, and you get, win them over. And maybe you might have a different viewpoint on the account than they do, and you can share some things. And then they realize, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm going to, this is a good connection for me. And then so you can start to win them over. And then when the business leader and the CFO calls up his McKinsey guy and he's like, hey, I'm thinking of doing something big with AWS. What do you think? Oh yeah, I talk to Dan all the time, and AWS is great. And so I think you need to kind of pick them off, but you don't pick them off until you have business support.
Yeah. And what do you think is your strongest characteristic as a sales leader?
Definitely, I'm a patent sales leader. So general patent, I believe in rolling up my sleeves and getting my hands dirty, and doing that alongside the troops. So they see I would never ask them to do something I wouldn't do. And so I'll write a handwritten note to an executive for them. I'll make a cold call for them. In fact, when we do call blitzes, I'm on the phones right there with them. And so those kinds of things, I think, make for a special sales leader, because there are definitely sales leaders that are in the ivory tower and just, what do you mean you didn't hit your forecast? And what do you mean you didn't update Salesforce? And what do you, and like, sales guys are like, wah.
I got a quota to make.
Exactly. That's right.
And what skill do you wish you had more of or better at?
Yeah, so I wish one of the things I'm working on and still working on is direct feedback, and just being really, really direct with reps about what I'm thinking, what I think would make a difference, and helping them absorb that feedback and registering it as well. So that process of give and take of feedback, whether it's something I want to hear or not, is I think something I wish I was better at. And I would say, so I think earlier in my career I was really bad at it. I'd say now I'm serviceable, and it's something I need to it's something I need to get better at.
Because sales is kind of this weird thing where off field, you can be very analytical about the game, but when you're in the game working on a deal, you can't have doubt. You got to have some confidence. What is your current approach to kind of have your reps see the weak spots of a deal? Is it just asking them, like, what do you think your competitor's going to do?
Yeah, the weak part of a deal, I think definitely I use guided discovery, similar to how you, at least I I don't know if you're a parent, Brian, but parents, as a parent, your kids, you can't tell them what to do.
No, you got to
You
lead
ask
them
questions,
towards
you
it.
lead
Yeah.
them to it, right?
Yeah.
So the same with a rep. I find that the weak parts of the deal you have to lead them to, and it's through asking questions and poking and making them think that they're coming to it on their own. Um,
And what part of the deal do you think most reps are overlooking or being overly confident at?
uh, I think that in general, the place where they fall down is that they have a stakeholder who is perhaps telling them more than they want to, or telling them more positively than what the aspects are. They feel like that person is their ticket to ride, and that's enough. And
Yeah,
what ends up happening is that person then either goes to their leadership or has to go to somewhere for approval, and they don't get it.
they don't get
So
it.
that, and I don't think that enough salespeople think lateral thinking enough around that to find and predict and know that what's going to happen down the road and where does that all have to go. And I think they get stuck. And so they're very linear thinkers. It's like, okay, well, my guy has it and he's going to take it to the next
Yes.
guy and it's going to be okay. Not, you got to blanket the whole thing. So I'd say that's the place.
Yeah, because I think they don't think moves ahead and they don't
Hmm.
see the whole chessboard.
Correct.
That they're stuck on one move instead of, what's the gambit? What's the defense of that move? And that's
That's
a
right.
trap. That's the
Hmm.
classic go and steady trap
It is.
because the client's pretty much come on, come on into the trap. I'm your
Yeah, that's
guy.
right. That's right. Exactly. Right.
Don't
Exactly.
go
And
talking to these guys.
don't talk to anyone. Exactly. Don't talk to anyone else. I'm your guy. Right. But you have to
I
be
can
able to
get it
do
done.
that.
I do this all the
Exactly.
time.
Totally. That's right. Those
Then all of
parts
a
are the
sudden they're not
killer.
calling you back.
That's right. They go quiet. That's right.
And like here we are near the end of the quarter. I don't know if it's the end of your quarter or not. How can you get a sense, or what is your sense of whether a deal is going to close or not? That it's not already in procurement. It's in the high likelihood, whatever you guys call that. The rep is like, oh yeah, they're looking at boats and summer houses. Right? But
Yeah.
what are the signals that you get or look for?
So if you have engagement with um, legal departments and contracts and paperwork are in flight, they're all or at least they're prepared for it. You have purchasing and procurement contacts that are alive and well and kicking and interested in talking and returning calls. And you have a business person or a stakeholder that's there and helping you champion through that process. If you have all of those three things, then there's a pretty good chance your deal's going to happen. If one
Yeah.
of those is missing, then you are at risk. So
Yeah. There's often that champion saying, oh, it's in procurement.
mm-hmm, exactly. But have you talked
Have
to
you
the
talked
procurement
to
guy?
anybody?
Exactly. That's right.
Right.
That's right. Because I can't tell you. I remember calling into a customer when my rep was like, well, the guy said, it's in procurement. I said, did you? Yeah. So I called in to the procurement department just randomly. I'm like, hi, this is, blah, blah, blah. I'm the leader at this company. Do you by any chance have anything in your procurement system about from us as a vendor? No.
Mm.
No, what are you talking about? No, what? And then of course the business person called. What did you call into my procurement for? And blah, blah, blah. Like you said this, right? So
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
we're thinking about putting it into procurement.
exactly. That's right. That's right.
Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to connect with you?
So I'm on social, LinkedIn, Dan Lawrence. I have him on Twitter as well. And of course, I just forgot my handle. Daniel _Luther _ Lawrence on Twitter. And yeah, go ahead.
And are you looking for any people or any get the word out about?
I am hiring 3 people at the moment. So
Excellent.
yes, across the US. So if you are either on the East Coast or West Coast, reach out to me.